What's good, y'all, man? We back with another video, man. How y'all doing? If doing great today, man. They say we got deceased 1920s, man, describes the afterlife. We finna see what he says about the afterlife, and you know what I'm saying? See what happens. See what he say. Real world.
The following was recorded in February 1964, where a deceased man by the name of Ted Butler had died after being struck by a vehicle in 1923. The interviewers were George Woods and Betty Green, and the medium was Leslie Flint. This is an edited version. Ted Butler claimed that one Saturday he'd been out shopping, and as he was crossing the road was struck by a lorry. He saw a crowd of people standing, looking down at something. He looked down and saw someone who looked exactly like him and hadn't realised that it was himself. He saw his wife crying and stood beside her, but he couldn't see him. They put the body in the ambulance and the wife got in, along with
That's
the
like
nurse.
a throwback
Ted
ambulance
sat
car.
beside her.
Crazy.
It gradually dawned on him that it was him lying down, yet he was feeling fine. When he attended his funeral, he thought it was an expense for nothing. He had a horse-drawn carriage, which he thought was touching, but it all seemed silly to him. As the pastor was reciting, he stood beside him and kept nudging him with his elbow, but he didn't take any notice. They filled in the grave and Ted didn't know what to do and hung around his house for weeks. Occasionally, he would ride on the trams, and one day he had a conversation with a woman sitting next to him, and she said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "What do you mean, what am I doing here? I might as well be here as anywhere else." "Yes," she said, "but you ought to be doing something, not just going up and down in trams and worrying your wife. You can't do anything that way." He said, "It's all very well for you, but where do you go then?" He then realised that she too was dead. She said, "Well, I've been coming up and down on the trams with you for some time, but you probably never noticed me until now. I've been waiting for a chance to give you a hand. Don't you think it's time you got away from here? It's only your thoughts that's holding you down. You want to do more than this, surely, hanging around the earth. Nobody takes any notice of you. What's the point of it?" Ted said, "It's true, no one takes any notice, but I don't know of anything else." The lady said, "It's your state of mind that keeps you down here. If you were to release your thoughts and think about things of a higher thought, you'd get away from all of this.
Exactly.
Of course, I understand it's
If you know, you know.
to the way you
Sure.
passed, the suddenness of it, and the thought vibrations of your wife and mother that hold you back. You come with me. I'll take you." Ted said, "Well, shall we get off at the next stop?" She said, "What do you mean, get off at the next stop? We can get off whenever we want to. You're doing things out of habit. You've got to get out of those habits because these things aren't important. By any thought, you can transfer yourself from this condition. Hold my hand and close your eyes and try not to think of anything. Make your mind blank and don't think of anything material," which Ted found hard. The next moment, he was sitting in an armchair opposite the lady in a room with curtains at the windows. There was a rug on the floor. It was a wonderful feeling of lightness and warmth, and he thought the sun was shining through the windows. Everything looked clean, and the table was nicely laid out. There was everything that one would want. It was like he'd gone somewhere for afternoon tea and thought, "Where am I now?" She said, "I've brought you here. You're in my little home." He said, "I don't know what my wife would think of me for sitting in a strange woman's home," and she laughed.
Crazy.
"You don't think like that now. Now we'll have a nice chat and a cup of tea and I'll explain things to you. I've been here for many years and came here at the turn of the century. I had a seizure and fell down beside the kitchen table. I always remember how it happened, and I must have fallen into unconsciousness. My dear mother came and fetched me away, and I'm very happy here living with my mother."
You guys ever heard of Threadbeats? The
That's
subscription
crazy,
company
bro.
that
I don't know, man.
Ted asked,
She's
"Where's your
good,
mother
she's
now?"
good.
"She's out." Ted asked, "What, does she work?" And she laughed. "Well, I suppose you could call it work, but not work in the old way. My mother was a hard-working woman when on earth. She used to take in washing for people, but now she's very busy and goes to a place where she looks after children because she was always fond of children. These children are little children who died in infancy or when they were very young. She helps to bring them up and look after them. She'll be back soon."
Man.
Ted said, "I wonder if I'm going to taste the tea." Because when he went to his
Crazy.
wife's place and they were having a cup of tea, he used to think, "Well, I'd like a cup of tea," but he couldn't pick out the cups, and anyway, he wouldn't have tasted it. She said, "Oh, you will here because you're in an entirely different atmosphere. You're in natural conditions now, so everything around you will be real. Put out your hand and you'll feel things are real, not like when you were going back to your wife where things didn't seem to have any reality. But here you will. You have this cup of tea, dear, and you'll taste it. It'll taste just the same as the tea you have on Earth. He tasted it, and it was. She said, well, isn't that nice? He replied, yes, it's very nice. Who'd have thought? Who would think that people on Earth would think of us sitting up here having cups of tea? She said, well, when you first come, you'll feel it's necessary to have this or that. It's provided for, but it's only a temporary thing until you accept the fact that you don't need those things. I don't normally have tea or anything like that, but since you're a guest in my house and you're getting gradually accustomed to things, I thought it would help you to be able to make it as natural as possible, but it's only for your benefit. She then said, I make a habit of going down to Earth if I can help someone like you, earthbound. Ted said, what's earthbound? Well, that's what you were, poor dear. You were tied down to the earth because of your state of mind and thoughts. You couldn't release yourself. Part of my job is to help
He
people
probably was so
release
attached to the
themselves from
physical
material
world.
things.
He didn't
I
really worry
travelled
about
up
the
and
spiritual
down on
stuff.
that tram many times with people because I used to live in that town years ago. There were many people I knew there, and I thought it would be a wonderful thing if I could help those people if they needed help. Thousands of people do that, and I'm only one of them. Ted was then asked by the interviewers what it was like where he was now. He replied that there were many diversities he could describe, and you've got every aspect of the scenery of life that you would associate with Earth. It's like all the beauty of the world without any of the irritations. There's gorgeous lakes, forests, trees, birds, and flowers. There's beautiful light, not harsh. It's a soft and yet beautiful light, and at first you wonder if it was due to the sun, but it was told it has nothing to do with the sun at all. It's an illumination of a natural being. But what its source is, he never discovered. It's vastly different to the earth, where you're dependent on the sun, the moon, and the stars. They were not dependent on those. It's a world which is far removed from the old idea of things. The laws which affected them were natural in themselves, and there's no injustice. There's a perfect realization of things. They live in a harmonious state of being because there is no ill will, no bad thinking. Of course, there are on lower spheres. It's a matter of how far you've gone and what you've achieved. After he got settled, he did go back a few times to see his wife. She'd remarried, but he didn't blame her. But the old earth didn't mean the same to him. He occasionally went to places to see people, but nobody understood. He occasionally went to the spiritual church where his wife used to go to, but he didn't think much of it. He went to see a medium when they held a reading, and he recognized one or two people. He once got a message over, but didn't think he was very good at it. Ted told his interviewers they were lucky because they'd had a lot of experience, but were bound to come up against some awkward customers. He imagined the most difficult ones were the religious ones, because they've got so much fixed in their minds that it would take a lot to shift.
Exactly.
Keeping the man whose mind's open,
It's way
and
harder
not
to
cluttered
change
up with religion. He
any
now realized so much
religion
more. And he
mindset
thought
person.
if only he'd understood this, he wouldn't have been running around, traveling in trams, and worrying himself because he was ignorant. That's the trouble with the world, ignorance. If only people weren't ignorant of the truth of life and what happens at death, it would make a vast difference to an untold number of people. Not only would it make a big difference to the people that come over, but also a big difference to the people who are left behind. He thinks everyone would see things differently, and they'd understand more, and it would change them. It would make
It'll change their perspective,
and break
bruh.
down all the silly barriers people have got about colour, religion,
Exactly.
class, and all that nonsense. There's no feeling of ill will of any kind, and everyone gets on fine, and we're all in harmony. And there's great
Exactly.
peace and opportunity to do all the things we want to do. It's a wonderful thing, as would make a vast difference to them all.
Well, hopefully that changed y'all perspective or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? It's your life. Do what you want. But I'm just, you know what I'm saying? It's just a video. He just described what he's seen in afterlife. Just take it with a grain of salt and, you know what I'm saying, do your own research and stuff. Hopefully you guys like the video, man. Yeah, man. See y'all tomorrow, bro.